Today, we're going to get into the really disturbing and frankly mysterious case of Otto Warmbier. He was an American college kid whose trip to North Korea ended in a tragedy that absolutely shocked the world. Just think about that for a second. That's a quote from Otto's mother, Cindy, talking about the moment she finally saw her son again after he'd been held for 17 months. That horrifying image, that sound, is really at the heart of this entire mystery. So you have to ask, right? How on earth does a 21-year-old on an adventure tour, a popular athletic guy, end up coming home in a condition that his own parents couldn't even recognize? Let's dive in and try to piece together what we know. To really get what happened, we kind of have to start at the end of the story, with Otto's return to the US in June of 2017. The Otto who came home was, well, he wasn't the same person who left. He was in what's called a state of unresponsive wakefulness, basically a vegetative state. He couldn't see, he couldn't hear, his head was shaved, and he had a feeding tube. His parents said he would jerk violently and make these awful, inhuman sounds. He was physically there, but the son they knew was gone. Doctors told his family that there was no hope, that he would never recover, so they had his feeding tube removed. Just 6 days after he landed back on American soil, Otto died. And this turned what was already a crisis into a major international incident.
Okay, so why was he even in North Korea's custody? To figure that out, we have to look at the official story that Pyongyang put out there, their justification for everything that happened. So what was this big crime? According to them, he tried to steal a propaganda poster from a staff-only area in his hotel. I mean, it sounds like a college prank, right? But North Korea labeled it a hostile act against the state.
And this was the slogan on the poster. Now, for you and me, these might just be words, but in a country like North Korea, where the ruling family is revered, taking a poster with the former leader's name on it, that's seen as a huge, unforgivable offense.
Then came the confession. In a televised press conference, Otto told this wild story. He said a church member offered him a used car for the poster, that a secret society at his university was involved, and that the CIA had helped plan the whole thing. I mean, it sounds like a bad spy movie. Pretty much everyone agrees this was a forced confession scripted from start to finish by his captors.
The trial itself, it lasted just 1 hour, and the sentence was staggering. 15 years of hard labor for taking a poster. The punishment was so completely out of proportion that it just stunned the rest of the world. Now, this is where the story gets even more complicated. His family was convinced he was brutally physically tortured, but the medical evidence, it paints a much more complex and, in some ways, an even more mysterious picture. Let's look at these two competing ideas.
So here's the conflict. Otto's father said his son's bottom teeth looked like they'd been rearranged with a pair of pliers. It's a powerful, awful image. But the coroner, after examining him, said there was no evidence of trauma to his teeth or jaw. The family also pointed to a big scar on his foot as evidence of torture, but the medical exam found just a few small scars, and most of them had a medical explanation.
So what did the doctors say happened? His catastrophic injury wasn't from a beating. The official diagnosis was something called anoxic encephalopathy. In simple terms, it means his brain was starved of oxygen, which caused massive, irreversible damage. The brain scans he had done backed this up. They showed tissue loss across all parts of his brain, which suggests the damage happened all at once. This is what you see when someone has a cardiopulmonary arrest, meaning their heart stopped beating or they stopped breathing. It's really not what you'd expect to see from repeated blows to the head, which would cause more specific localized damage. North Korea, for their part, had a pretty flimsy story. They claimed he got botulism, took a sleeping pill, and just had a bad reaction that put him in a coma. But when American doctors tested for botulism, they found absolutely zero evidence of it. So while we don't know exactly what happened to Otto's body, we have to zoom out, because what we do know is that he became a pawn in a very dangerous game between two countries with nuclear weapons. Just look at the timing of all this. Days after Otto is detained, boom, North Korea has a nuclear test. Later that year, boom, another one. His own father believed they were using his son as a kind of human shield, a distraction while they went ahead with their weapons program. And Otto's death just poured gasoline on the fire. His case became a symbol of the regime's brutality, and it was used to justify this kind of extreme talk from President Trump. The two countries were getting dangerously close to the brink of war. But then, In a totally stunning reversal, diplomacy took over. Just a year later, all that fire and fury talk had turned into this. President Trump talking about falling in love with the very same leader he'd been threatening. It was a wild shift. And for the Warmbier family, this was just a gut punch. After championing their story of torture, President Trump seemed to let Kim Jong-un off the hook, saying he didn't think the North Korean leader knew about Otto's situation. You could imagine how abandoned and betrayed they felt. So, all of that brings us right back to the central mystery. If it wasn't beatings, what in the world could make a healthy 21-year-old's heart or lungs just stop working? We're just left with theories, really, with no concrete answers. Could it have been an accidental overdose or a bad reaction to some drug they gave him? Is it possible he choked on something? Was it some kind of torture that doesn't leave physical marks? Or, and this is a really dark possibility, could he have tried to take his own life after getting that hopeless 15-year sentence? We just don't know. The one big clue we have, ironically, actually came from the North Koreans. They provided brain scans from April 2016, and when doctors analyzed them, they figured out the brain injury must have happened in the weeks right after his trial in March. It gives us a timeline, but it still doesn't tell us how.
And maybe, in the end, this is the question we're left with. It's easy to get caught up in the medical mystery of it all. But does the specific cause really change the fundamental injustice here? This was a young man sentenced to 15 years of hard labor for a minor offense after a complete sham of a trial. They held him for over a year and then sent him home to his family to die. And that, no matter what the details are, is the undeniable tragedy of Otto Warmbier.